powered by Riverside FM.
Hey there, it's Jitsie, and you're listening to the Crush Chronicles podcast, a safe space to discuss crushes and how they affect our lives. So grab your coffee or wine, pull out your old diaries, and settle in for today's topic and discussion. Walking through the crowded student center, I dodged teenagers, tables, and chairs as I headed toward the arts hall, located through the set of doors on the opposite side. I walked solo, my black messenger bag, the front flap styled with a collection of buttons from Hot Topic, was slung over my left shoulder. My black, curly hair laced with highlights bobbed up and down with each step I took. I didn't pay much attention to the people around me, deep in thought either with stressors about school, thoughts from my previous class, or conversations I had that day. I wasn't one of those girls who would get stopped in the hall to be talked to unless it was by someone I already knew. Until that day. Hey, what'd you think of the show? Okay, welcome to today's episode of the Crush Chronicles podcast. Let me introduce today's guest. She describes herself as a small business mentor and community champion, the owner of Orange County's local gym collective, a store that not only provides a platform for over 50 local women-owned businesses, but also hosts workshops and events that celebrate creativity, female entrepreneurship, and which she helps entrepreneurs with branding and business consulting. You can even reap the benefits of her insights via her recently launched podcast of the same name. I'm excited to introduce Jasmin to talk with me today. Welcome to the show, Jasmin.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. It's so interesting to be on the other end of a podcast. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm so glad that I'm assuming this is your first time being a guest instead of the host. Yeah. Yay, I'm so glad that you chose my show to do this.
Way chiller experience.
I'm 100% with you on that because all you have to do really is do like a little bit of prep and then show up. So yeah, I'm so glad. Okay, so before we start with all of the like deep questions, getting into it, we're going to start with an ice crusher. So who is a current celebrity or fictional crush you have, or one that you had in your childhood?
It's so funny. So when I read that question, I was like, okay, I go back to my boy band like phenomenon phase. I was like a teen bop girly. Like I had pictures and posters on my walls. I was obsessed with Justin Timberlake for a little bit, but I feel like the person where I was like, I saw him and I was like, this is love. Like I love him. Have you ever watched 10 Things I Hate About You? I was obsessed with Andrew Keegan.
Really? Okay, I had a hot moment of Andrew Keegan as well.
Fun fact, we share a birthday. I just learned that today.
Oh, really?
I was like, okay, I'm like, what's his name? So I Googled like hot guy from 10 Things I Hate About You. His bio came up. Yeah, his birthday is January 29th.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So you guys had a little bit of a connection there without you even realizing it. That kind of helps me because I was trying to figure out, usually I share like a crush because there were so many like celebrity crushes of our time when we were growing up. But I absolutely loved 10 Things I Hate About You. And while most of my friends they were usually about Heath Ledger, which is understandable, but I was always about Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, and the crush has continued because now he does things like I like all of his roles that he's done, and he also started that, I don't even know what we would call it. It's maybe a company or what, but the Hit Record. Have you heard about Hit Record? Yeah, and I loved that. I kind of like followed that for a little bit. I think that was like a decade ago, but yeah, I'm always like about his projects. So
it's like our souls know. Our souls know. Andrew does humanitarian work for like the ocean and things. And I'm like, I love a humanitarian. Of course, he's an Aquarius like me.
I love that. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. So before you joined today, you read the first installment of Connor's story of the Crush Chronicles series. The discussion today is going to be inspired by that piece. And for listeners, you do not have to know anything about the story. You haven't had to read the story. It's just the questions are going to be inspired by that. Okay. So the first one is at the beginning of the Meet Cute, which is the title of the chapter. I state that teenage Rachel was not, quote, one of those girls who got stopped in the hall to talk. What is something you could state about teenage Jasmin?
I love this because I haven't really reflected on that time in my life yet. It was so nostalgic to kind of go back to that place. What I remember is always outwardly being a social butterfly, quote unquote, but I remember internally just dying inside. I feel like to that time, being a teenager is so tough and not feeling seen. I feel like kids now, they're exposed to way more things about mental health and, self love and all the things where our generation, I feel like we didn't have that. So we all kind of thought there was something wrong with us. And I remember feeling that way. We're like, okay, yeah, people were recognizing me in the hall. I had a lot of friends, but I never felt seen. And I think that's what I took away from that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I love that. Doing this podcast, which you probably can speak to this, anytime you create something, it always kind of goes into a direction that you didn't think it was going to go into, which is usually a bonus. It's not anything bad, but how you described that you felt like you're the only one, you're kind of alone. That's what I thought when I started writing this series. I thought I was just crazy, ridiculous Rachel. And yes, there are things that are unique to me and unique to you, but having begun to interview people on this subject, we are just all together. Like we were together, but separate. Like we were going through it at the same time, the same things. But I just didn't know a lot of this stuff. I thought was just me, but I'm like, nope, it's
Mhm.
definitely universal. And yeah, I do agree. I feel like kids do have a lot more resources now because we sure didn't. Mental health was not a buzzword when we were kids.
No.
It doesn't make it any less of a struggle for teens. Teenagers are always going to have a struggle going through that time, but it's nice that they have more resources now.
Yes.
Yeah. So after reading the excerpt, what parts of the story stuck out or resonated with you and why?
I feel like it's that. It's that kind of like what we just talked about, her feeling invisible almost. I feel like that is something that amongst the cliques, I feel like high school, the actual roadmap to a high school, like in Mean Girls, I feel like we can all draw that picture and it'll all apply to our high school at some point in some degree. But I think it's really fun the way that you describe the meeting. It's almost like you can feel it, that excitement when someone does acknowledge you. And I wanna call that the in between, like the glimpses of glitter in life that happen. It's like those feelings like, "Oh, okay, well, I went to a show and the hot guy recognized me." I'm sure guys have glimmers too, but I feel like women are so much more in tune with those things that it's nice to have those moments even as, especially someone in high school.
Yeah. I love how you describe that as glimmers. And I think that's such a visual way to explain it. Cause yeah, I totally agree. You just have that moment that kind of lights up inside you, even if you don't know what the heck's going on. Like you said, you're in touch with that feeling.
I spent so much time like, trying to be, like, nonchalant about things, like, in high school, and if I could go back, I really wish that I just, like, leaned into it and enjoyed the experience versus trying to figure out people's intentions and, like, all those things, and, like, my little sister, when she was growing up, I would tell her that, I'm like, "Just enjoy being, like, young, like, just enjoy that while you can, because life just gets harder, and it's harder to find those moments?"
Does she listen to you?
No, of course not.
What's your age difference? Like, are you pretty close?
Oh, so I'm 34. I think she's 22. So we're like about 10 years apart.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's so funny because it's very similar to I have two girls, and one is 12, about to go on 13, and I tell her the same things. But of course, well, one, mom, they're never going to listen to mom. Mom doesn't
Yeah.
know, mom doesn't understand because to them, I'm so far removed from it, right? Different time. They've never seen me as a kid, but I'm just like, dude, don't try to grow up so fast. Like really relish it. We don't realize how special our youth is while we're there.
You know what's funny about that? So my mom and I are really close. And the older that I've gotten, with the, like emotional maturity and all those things that come with like, getting older, I've learned to see my parents stripped from like the mom title. And it's like, okay, you were 22 raising us, trying to figure this out. You weren't me not long ago. But it's so funny how as kids and teenagers, we think our parents have no idea what's going on. Like they have done
Yeah.
this before. Like
Yeah.
that's why. And it's so funny how I thought that I was getting away with stuff. And my mom's like, no, I just picked and chose my battles. Like, what do you mean? I like the fact that you have two teenagers, I can't even believe that because you look like you're in your
Oh,
20s, man.
thank you. That's so nice. I don't have two teenagers yet. My
Oh,
oldest is
okay.
12. And then her little sister is 10. So they're fast approaching. They're in that preteen kind of like starting to get like that little attitude. And yeah, me and my husband have to buckle up for sure.
I think of The Office where he's like, oh my God, it's happening. That's what you're doing.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Okay. So one of the places teenage Rachel frequented was the Music Pit, a small town local punk scene in which she felt like she stood out because she was the only one with tan skin and big curly hair. What about this do you find relatable?
Oh my God, that was a question where I was like, okay, this is deep. Seriously, I felt that way when I was working. I was a young assistant manager. I started with that big box retailer when I was 18. So I kind of grew up in that company. I remember like not wanting to get promoted for the longest, like in my 20s, because I'm like, no, I was doing sales at that time. Like I have a Monday through Friday. I don't ever want that schedule. And life happens. And I feel like there's like this existential pressure that we put on ourselves at like 25, where we're like, okay, I don't have a house yet. I don't have kids. Like, I really need to progress in that journey. And I'm really grateful for all of it. But I remember being an assistant manager. You get to go to Atlanta. They send you there for like a week and a half for training for that new role. And I remember sitting in there and I'm like, oh my God, no one looks like me. Where outwardly, I'm sure they were all looking at me like, oh my God, her hair's so long, nothing but compliments. But like what I felt was an immense sense of insecurity because I did not look like I didn't fit that cookie cutter of what an assistant manager in that company looked like. From being a woman to being young to being, I guess I don't want to say full of life, but like full of life. Like I was just different. And as I promoted within the company, that insecurity that I had kind of got worse. Like within my peers, it was awesome because I felt like they kind of raised me in that company because I either worked for them or, we knew each other. But when I became a peer as a general manager, I remember it was totally different. Not in how they treated me, but like the regional meetings or like going to Las Vegas to the store manager meeting. So I went from a classroom of like 30 people not looking like me to like a whole auditorium of people that don't really look like me or act like me or talk like me. And that was really hard. I think back to that version of myself and it makes me sad because what I should have celebrated as my uniqueness, I put myself through this like mental torture of I don't fit in, I'm not meant to be here. And it's like I wasn't meant to be there clearly because this local gem collective happened, but I feel like I didn't give myself enough credit for who I was. And that's how I know I'm in the right place now. Like I'm being celebrated for who I am versus like that mental torture of not feeling like I fit in. I just like trauma dumped, sorry.
No, that's great. Your answer was so I'm sure it's going to resonate with like a lot of listeners. And I find it very interesting. One of the things you said was when you did get the promotion, it actually got harder. Whereas most people would think that it would get easier because you got the spot, right? Like, if anything, it should boost your confidence. And I also think it kind of speaks a little bit to our hustle culture. Like you were working for a big corporation too, or a bigger company. And it's more like, okay, once we reach the goal, it just gets moved further away. Like, the next goalpost gets moved ahead. You don't even really get to sit with the, oh, I got it. Now it's like, what's the next thing? So instead of, you absorbing, the little bit of confidence you should have gotten, you're just like, okay, what are the new pressures that are hitting me now? So I find that really interesting.
The irony in all of it took a year and a half for me to realize that like nobody in that auditorium even knew who I was. No one was paying attention to me. I'm sure like 99% weren't, there's always that 1 or 2%. What's harder about that is like I feel like it's easier to blame someone and say you made me feel this way. The aha moment that I had was like, girl, it was you. Like you're your own worst enemy. And that I think is harder. When like my snacks and yap sessions that I'm doing with these women networking events is like we're talking about real stuff. It's like own who you are and just live an authentic life. And I promise you, the noise will go away. But when you're your own worst enemy, you need people around you that are going to do that for you. The problem for me was that I didn't have people around me encouraging that for me. And it's not their fault. It's just that's what they knew. You work hard, you get promoted, you make a lot of money, and then you made it. when I made it, I was trying to figure out like, why am I still not happy?
Yeah. So tell for people who may not know, talk about your snack and yap sessions. What is that about?
Oh my God. Okay. The way that this thing has evolved in just 2 sessions, looking back, the way that I can describe that first coffee and yap session was almost like my love letter to myself. And like, look, I'm going to share my true story, like the ugly parts that had to happen before this happened. What was awesome about that was I'm sharing my story and I was so nervous. I was so scared. I prepped for that day. And everyone in the room was just like, it resonated. And it started this movement of, I think, what Local Gem Collective has grown into to be a gathering place for women to just be real. There's no frontier, I mean, you've known me for a while now. I don't even attend networking events because it just doesn't feel authentic to me. And I think that's what I was trying to provide. And I think we nailed it. So it went from coffee and yap to me sharing my story and my journey to Local Gem Collective. Amongst majority were entrepreneurs. There was a few that were thinking of starting a business, and those are always my favorite because it's like they come, they get so inspired, and they just do it. To me sitting down, and I'm like, how do I replicate that? I could never replicate that day. So how do I evolve coffee and yap? And that's when I was like, okay, I've met so many amazing women, you included. Like the way that we met is just insane. And like we'll have to talk about that someday. But I started thinking of the women that have like inspired me on this journey and their stories. So one was literally an engineer, quit her career, decided to become a medium, and she's killing it. I won't say decided to be a medium. She owned her gifts and fully engulfed herself in that. And she's been very successful. And the snacks and yap was so powerful. All of the attendees, I say this with so much love, but we all were crying. Like, all of us were just like crying, just hearing other women's stories. And I think there's like magic in that because as women, I feel like we're groomed sometimes to like see each other as competition in every sense of the whether it's appearance, it's success, it's like you're a mom and you're not. Like all the things that we're expected to be, that again, those yap sessions are like safe spaces to drop all that and just exist for a little bit. Like, let's just talk. Like, how are you doing? And that's what it's become. So our next one, I'm leaning in with the yap. We're going to be doing a tarot yap because I've met so many powerful readers that have helped me change things like my money mindset and all the things that we're programmed with.
Yeah, I love that. And I
That was
think
a lot.
no, I love that. I love that you shared that. And I think part of what makes that so important, which really quick side note, I saw your first one, like the flyer for it, and I was really bummed that I couldn't go. I had a conflict because I love coffee and I love going to your events. So the coffee and yap, I was like, this is 100% me. And I was like, and I cannot go because I have a conflict. So I'm glad that you've kept it up so I can go to a future one eventually. But what I think is so important about it is like how you said at one of the sessions, everybody was in tears. You know, you have that connection in person. And I think that's really difficult to come by nowadays, especially post COVID. Right now, you and I are on Zoom because that's more of a strategic thing. But people have a lot of these, like a similar thing to snacks and yap or coffee and yap online. And those are great because it can really connect people that are farther distance away. But I think you're returning to the root of community, which community is like in person, because you can feel each other's energy and really make a deeper connection if there's not a screen in between you. So that's one thing that I think is really important about what you do.
What's funny is that we sold 9 tickets for the coffee and yap. And I remember I was like, I still am trying to figure out that voice that applies pressure on me still to this day of like, nine's not good enough. You had 12 tickets. Like, why didn't it sell out? And I remember after that day, I was like, oh my God, anything more than 9 or 10 would just not work because there's not enough space, there's not enough time for 10. And the second session, I think we sold 8 tickets. But the room felt so full. Everyone was talking, everyone was sharing. And it was honestly probably one of the most powerful, most beautiful spaces I've ever been in. For that healed a piece of me, as far as my femininity, to be safe in that space and just allow myself to cry.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's so beautiful. That's so great. I'm so glad that you have that space and you're so supportive and you've gone through it. So you obviously have a lot to share. And I think it's very interesting that you said you were so nervous before the first one because obviously I wasn't there at that first session, but I have been to a couple of your events and you can't tell you come out very confident. And I think it's because you really enjoy what you're doing. Like you said, you can feel the difference from being here now than at the job you were at before. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. Okay, so this excerpt, going back to the Crush Chronicles and the Meet Cute, it's titled the Meet Cute because of the awkward way Connor and teen Rachel met, which was made more awkward by Rachel, just to be clear about that. What are your feelings about meet cutes in general? And do you have one of your own to share?
Meet cutes are like a strive of existence. Like we need those in our lives. So yes, it's definitely a necessity. I'm not just doing this because he's my husband, but the way that we met is kind of bizarre. Like I say, it's destined. I was 18 and I don't know, I think he's 3 or 4 years older than me. And I remember back then it was MySpace. Like everyone's Instagram
Yeah.
today, for us, it was MySpace. And I can't tell you who added who first, but there was always the flirtiness going on, whether it was a like or a comment, but it was never disrespectful. And I feel like that's what made him stand out to me. It was always class act. And at that time in my life, I just wasn't used to that. You know, it was like, oh my God, you're so hot. Where he like wanted to have a genuine conversation. And it was always timing with us. Like he had a girlfriend or I was in a relationship or seeing somebody, but we always stayed connected. And we met once and it's so weird. So my best friend at that time met his roommate or his best friend at that time and they were hooking up, okay? So then we're gonna call my friend Melanie. So then Melanie was like, "Hey, Jasmine, Cerna really wants to meet you." And I was like, "Wait, Cerna 714?" Like that was his MySpace thing. And I was like, I kind of know him already, but I don't know if I want to go. I remember I was really hungover. Like I was in the club scene, so I was like, I don't know if I want to go or not. So I ended up going, total TMI, but we hooked up. And I remember I knew I liked him, but I was like, oh my God, I messed that up. Like we hooked up already. Like it's never gonna work. And he's gonna kill me for saying this. And I remember I was like, whatever. So we kind of just talked for a little bit after that, and it kind of fell off for like 3 years. And I think he had gotten out of a long relationship. I was getting out of a really toxic relationship. It was really bad. And I remember I was like being single. It was like 2 weeks where I was single. And he texted me one day randomly. I was like 21 then. And he's like, "Hey, it's been a while. How have you been? Do you want to hang out?" And I was like, "You know what? I do actually." So we hung out. I remember like I really appreciate a good conversation, Avi. And we went to downtown Fullerton. I think it was Taco Tuesday, so we had $2 beers, but it was the best conversation that I had had in a long time. And it was like really refreshing coming out of like the nasty relationship that I was in before him. And from that day, we just stayed in touch. We ended up dating unofficially for like 10 months. And our dating anniversary is December 12th, 2012. So it's 12, 12, 12. We just got married April 22nd of 2024. And it's like that anniversary is 4/22/24, which
Wow.
is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's definitely my soulmate. Like when I think of a cute story, that's what I thought of.
Yeah, I love that. I'm totally a nerd in this aspect. Have you ever looked into the numerology? And for just because you have such cool numbers, 12, 12, 12, and 4, 2, 2, 4. My husband and I got married on 10, 10, 10.
That.
But yeah, have you ever looked into the numerology?
Okay. No, I'm a woo-woo chick, so I'm definitely down. Like if you know someone
Yeah.
that can do that, I'm definitely interested.
There is one person I found on Instagram. I'll send her over to you. But yeah, I just find all of that stuff so interesting. And I didn't realize this when I was, scheduling the interview with you or talking about this topic. But technically, even though it wasn't romantic, you and I kind of had a meet cute, which you kind of mentioned before.
We did. It was wild. It was wild. You can share, I can share either way.
I'll share my side of the story because mine was not as enlightening as yours. So obviously, Jasmine owns the local gym collective, and it was recommended to me by a friend. I had only been in there once before. So I went in to do Christmas shopping. And I was the only one in because I think I was in there for like you had just opened. And I was like really looking, like, because there's a lot of stuff in there and it's so cute. And you came over and was like, oh my gosh, I love how you're like looking at everything, because some people just kind of zoom in. And I was like, no, there's like so much to look at. And I take my Christmas shopping very seriously. So I was like really making sure like I got the good stuff. So I go, I pay, we have an awesome conversation. I think that's when you told me that you were the owner, and we left. I went out the door and I went to go put my stuff in the car. And for some reason, I don't know, because I don't do this because I am just like a little scaredy cat. I'm very shy. I'm still working on my imposter syndrome. But I had been writing on Substack at that point for probably a little over a year and had maybe just started networking. But I had a business card and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go give her my card. So I took it out of my purse and I went and gave it to you. And I never do stuff like that, but I did that day.
You did do that day, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so my side, I remember it was like an off time, and I had just gotten through the move of relocating the store, and I was really enjoying that quiet time. And I had just had a reading done where he was like, the downtime of like Christmas. I know that sounds wild to say that, but like the downtime in between now and Christmas is going to be about you creating systems and using your voice. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that means yet. I've always wanted to write a book. Like always, that's like my dream. Like I want to fly to New York and have fancy dinners and be a like published author. Like that's my dream job. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit and do it. I had time that day. That was the first day I busted out my laptop. I was sitting there typing a book, like literally a book, like chapters. And I remember my imposter syndrome is insane. It's really bad. And I didn't know what it was until I left my job. But while I was sitting there, I was like, it was literally just flowing out of me. And I was like, oh my God, no one's going to read this. Like, why am I doing this? I was going through those thoughts. And then you came in, and I remember like screaming. I was like, oh my God, shut up. And I showed you the laptop. And we had that aha moment like, holy shit, what just happened? What did we do? But that was definitely like, we were supposed to meet.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really surprised because you're like, oh my God. And you turned your laptop around and you're like, I'm writing a book like right now. And I was like, oh my God, I'm writing a memoir. So it was a very sweet connection. Yeah. So that was the story of me and Jasmine's meet cute. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
Thanks for listening to our TED Talk. I love it.
okay. So after the meet cute in the story, going back to the Crush Chronicles, teen Rachel drives around and drops off all of her friends. It's in her car, a 1992 black Honda Accord, that her friends try to convince her that Connor is into her. What was your first car and what memories do you have of it?
Lord. So I had a 2009 Black Focus, and I was the first friend to get a car. So I was that girl where I was always having to be the DD or, and we didn't have Uber back then. So, like,
Right.
kudos to our generation because we figured it out. We did not have Uber. So I was always the DD or the best of my ability DD back then. Obviously, I'm more responsible now. I encourage everyone to use Uber and stuff, but we just didn't do that. But honestly, the best times in that car, me and my friends frequented Hollywood a lot. We were in the club scene. And at that time, I was living in La Habra. So it's kind of a long drive. I was with at my mom's house. But me and my girlfriends would get ready. It was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then like Taco Tuesday. So I remember the first year, my mom asked me for my mileage. I think it was like for insurance or something. And we had just gotten back from Rosarito. We all told our moms that we were at like someone else's house. And I was gone for like 4 days. Of course, she asked me for my mileage right after that. So I was like, "Oh, well, there's like 98,000 miles on the car." And I remember she's like, "Where are you going? Like, what are you doing?" I was like, "Mom, I have a lot of places to go, okay? Like I go to school, I go to the mall." She's like, and this goes back to what I said earlier. She's like, "Do you think I'm stupid now?" But that car went through so much, like so much. It's actually my brother still has it.
I love that. It's still in the
Yeah.
family.
She is alive and well.
Yeah, it's funny the relationships we have with our cars, like they are special. So my first one that I mentioned in the story, the 1992 Accord, which at that time was already a decade old, but I was also the first one out of my friends to get a car. And it's funny how it kind of like, even just within your own friend group, it elevates your social status because you're, like you said, you're that girl. So I was that girl. I would drive us to and from the punk shows. I would drop my friends off at school. We'd go to the mall or whatever. But yeah, just a lot of memories in that car. And I was very attached to it. But I'm not sure if I mentioned it in this excerpt, but I was a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force. So we moved around a lot. So when I graduated from high school in Texas, which is where this story takes place, but we had to move to South Dakota afterwards. And to start college, I didn't stay in Texas. I followed my parents to keep living with them. So we couldn't take my car, even though I loved it. I had like stickers on the back from Hot Topic. Everybody in town could recognize it because it was a small town. They knew it was me. If I was at a stoplight, they'd be like, "Oh my God, it's Rachel." So like I just loved that car, even though it was old and kind of falling apart. So we had to sell it. And luckily at the time, well, I guess not so luckily, one of my friends, she was a year younger than me. Her car got totaled, not in a bad accident, but it was also an old car and it got totaled. So she needed a new car. And I was like, "Hey, I'm selling my car." So we sold it to her. So it felt good, at least giving it to somebody I knew. But I got a lot of messages from my friends afterwards, like, "Oh my God, why is she driving your car?" Like, I'll get excited because I'll see your car at the stoplight and we're like, "Oh my God, it's Rachel." But then they remember I moved and they're like, "Oh, it's not Rachel," which made me feel loved. But I was like,
For
"It's
sure.
okay. It's transitioning." And then somebody also messaged me, was like, she took your stickers off of the car. And it's like, why did you mess with a legacy?
Audacity.
Yeah. But yeah, and honestly, I feel like even though I was in high school, that car did get way more mileage than me now being a mom of two,
Right?
which is
I've
like, what
had
were we
like
doing?
everything we weren't supposed to be doing. You know
Yeah,
that's
pretty
me.
much.
Like I was like 18 dying in a cornfield and my mom didn't know where I was. Like, how am I still alive? That's literally
Yeah.
like I think our entire generation. But
Yeah.
that
I
was
think only our generation, I think it's just teenagers because I think I remember reading somewhere that what happens with our growth and development when you become a teenager, you have this sense of invincibility, which is, of course, puts parents into panic mode because we're just like, "Oh my God." But yeah, I totally get that. And that's why we got into so much trouble, whether we thought our parents knew about it or not.
right.
Okay, so what stands out about this piece is the denial the main character had about Connor's interest in her, which kind of goes back to the previous question I mentioned. How common do you think it is that we deny the possibility of someone's affection for us, and why do you think we do it?
I honestly think that everyone does it. Some of my friends, just I guess like you said with me, I see as like the most confident, like glowing woman, right? And then on the sidelines, it's like, oh my God, I was dying inside. I think we all exude that fun personality. But I think deep down we all have our own insecurities. Like it all ties in together, right? Like the yap sessions, like the intent behind that is to help women understand who the F they are. Like, girl, you're beautiful, you're powerful, but I feel like, especially like if you're older and can't receive love or receive compliments, I think a lot of that starts with our childhood. I think a lot of behaviors are learned. And I think that as an adult, if you have a hard time receiving, it's probably because as a child, you probably didn't receive the love that, you deserved or the affection that you deserved. For me, I come from a broken home. Everyone did their best, but I tell people I was literally raised by a village. But I have a really hard time receiving sometimes. And I remember in high school, especially in high school, my mom will listen to this and laugh. I remember telling her my life would be so much easier if I just was dumb and carefree. And I know that's offensive. But I love all my friends, especially the ones from high school, but I'm like, I would watch them be so easy and nonchalant and like, oh, he likes me. Okay. And I'm like, what is wrong with my brain? I overanalyze everything. Like, what's wrong with me? And I think that is where that comes from. I think a lot of it is the self worth aspect. So if we can't see ourselves how that person is seeing us, we're never going to believe it because we don't believe that we deserve it. And I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah, I agree. And it kind of goes back to something I was going to respond to earlier in our conversation. I think you mentioned how, like, how women specifically are raised. Like, we have all of these pressures put upon us. You're a mom and I'm not a mom, or, just also you don't look like everybody else in the room. And which is how I felt at that time too. And we are, as women, I think we are kind of conditioned not to receive very well. And yeah, that does start in our childhood. It does go back to when we're younger, which is really sad. Just like I remember being 10 or 11 and looking at 17 and all that, and all of the pressures were just already there. There was nobody in those magazines that looked like me, nobody who's naturally full and curvy. Like everybody was just a stick and they had blonde hair, or the curls weren't even natural, they just had to show you how to do it with a curling iron. Like it was just all of that stuff.
I don't have children, right? At least not yet. And you kind of said it earlier. I've lived it. And I'm kind of coming to terms with like maybe my life has been so challenging because I'm supposed to go through these things so I can help other women by sharing my story authentically. I'm not doing these workshops, like you said, virtually. I'm truly looking for human connection. And with my sister, I remember when she was growing up, I would try to instill that in her. You're so beautiful. You don't need makeup. You're 12. Like, what are you doing? Like, just be a kid. And it's interesting because I just had a reading with Tessa, who is a presenter at the Snacks and Gap. And she said something that really confirmed a lot of the thoughts, and she really simplified it for me when she said, when you're living your life, you have to see people with empathy. Like your mother did her best with what she learned and how she was raised. Your Lola, like my grandma, was raised her best by her mother. And when we do better as women now, we're healing those pieces of our lineage because we're choosing to be better and we're choosing to change. I'm sure you're instilling those things in your daughters. And it's like, it's this forever cycle of just choosing to be a better human, being a better woman. And I take that seriously. And I'm so committed to that in my life.
Yeah, me too. And yes, I do try to instill that in my girls. And yeah, it's hard because with parenting, the cliche phrase is, there's no manual for this, no instruction manual, which is true, and also not. There are a lot of parenting books, but at the same time, an instruction manual can only help you like with basic human needs, because
Right?
every single parent, mom, dad, or caregiver, aunt, uncle, grandparents, whatever, and your children are all 100% unique. When I gave birth to my first daughter versus my second daughter, completely different experiences. But not knowing that, I planned for my second birth based off what I knew from my first birth, which is logical, right? Like I
Right.
did this once, completely different. There was absolutely nothing I could have done in hindsight to like prepare for that. It was so different. And then same thing, they're both like completely different kids. Like what works for my eldest does not work for my youngest and vice versa. There's very few things that I can put to mesh together. And yeah, I also like what you said about how we just keep showing up each generation trying to do better. And with all of that too, I do believe that with age comes when wisdom. So we can learn from our mothers before us and apply what we can. Also, just times are always changing as well. The challenges that we have as women, as moms, sisters or whatever, the generations before us weren't going through the exact same thing. My children won't be going through the exact same thing that I did, but our basic wisdom is there. So yeah, I think it's important that we still continue to share, like you said, make important connections. So yeah. Okay. So if you were to write your own story, which crush in your life would you write about and why?
Feel like I'm supposed to say my husband, but for the sake of what we've talked about, I'll talk about a crush. I think I was in fourth grade. So there was this guy, I won't say his name, but he was just really mean to me. Like so mean. I was kind of overweight as a kid. Like I was never thin. And I would get teased for that in elementary school. My glow up happened in seventh grade. I went to middle school and everyone was like, what the hell? Like, what happened? But I don't want to say pretty, but I didn't look like everyone. And I remember he was super mean to me all the time. And there was a field trip where they went out of state. I don't know where they went, but my dad didn't give me permission to go. So I had to stay in school. And when everyone was gone, that's when he was like, I actually like you. I was so excited because I remember I liked him. He was the popular guy in my class. Talk about setting the tone for why do we deny love? It's that. Like, what the fuck? Sorry, excuse my language, but
No, it's okay.
was like 10 and I'm like, "Oh, okay, so if guys like you, they're mean to you." Like,
Yes.
what? I remember looking back at that in my 20s and I was like, "That's exactly what's wrong. That is what's wrong." He waited until no one saw that he actually liked me, and I was okay with it. I was 10, okay? But if that were to happen to me now as an adult, I'd be like, "No, screw you."
Yeah.
No. But I think all of those things that happen to us make up who we are and who we become. Proud to say I would never like anyone back that did that to me now, but
Yeah.
that's the crush I think I would write about because I feel like it's so important. That was a pivotal moment, in my life. I should
Yeah.
have
No.
pushed him off the jungle gym.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I feel like that is an incredibly common thing that we were told as little girls is, "Oh my gosh, so and so boy is, being mean to me." And we would be told, "He likes you. He has a crush on you." And that was kind of the end of the conversation, as if that was just acceptable that, okay, he likes you, so it's okay. But no, it's not. He's like verbally abusing me. I would
Yeah.
like literally get beat up on the playground by guys that apparently had a crush on me. And like they would told me, like everybody knew, and then I was just supposed to accept that like this is just how they show their affection. And yeah, that and so we're taught to accept it and absorb it. And then poor us later we're like, why can't I receive love?
It's funny because I feel like that relationship manifested in every relationship up until I met Anthony, like I'm married to now. And he is the most gentle, accepting soul. He is so kind. And I remember the first couple of years of our relationship, I had such a hard time receiving it, where I didn't know how to receive a genuine love. It took honestly, like God bless him, it took 5 or 6 years for me to be in my feminine and be okay. When I quit my career, I remember he was so supportive. And I say this all the time. I would have never been able to do this without his support, not only financially, but emotionally. And he could easily put the stress on me and say, no, you can't. We have responsibilities. But he was so all in on my happiness. And I feel like it's such a reward. He's such a reward compared to the other relationships that I've been in. I have a lot of single friends, and I'm like, you guys, the good ones are out there, I promise. I think you have to be in your feminine to attract that masculine. That is the correct masculine for you. He definitely balances me out.
Yeah, I love that. We've talked about this before in the previous season, how you kind of have to go through all the bad ones, kind of what you were talking about earlier in episode 2, just with anything in your life, you have to go through it in order to get to your point. You kind of do have to date around, which again is contradictory to what we were told for our generation because we also couldn't be seen as a floozy because we dated too
Yeah,
much. Like, so but you have to date around because that's how you learn not only what you do want but what you don't want. And that's come up a lot when I've had these conversations, and I do think it's true. I had a very similar experience. I was actually just talking about this with one of my good friends the other day, where I did the same thing. My husband, he has never ever done anything to ever make
never
me
make me.
feel unbeautiful. There's no question that he's very attracted to me. She's
Yeah,
always complimentary, like always talking about how much not only he just loves me, but just like my appearance. And that is completely a 180. I was also picked on for being chubby. I was also picked on for being ugly or whatever, like it was. I was always looked over for my really hot girlfriends I was hanging out with. The eyeballs would go right over me and go straight over to them. I was not used to receiving this. And we were engaged. We were engaged to be married at this point. And I had an emotional breakdown and I told him that I didn't think I deserved him. His sweetness was just like, oh my God, what's happening? Why are you even thinking this? And I was like, I think you deserve somebody prettier. Like sometimes I just feel like I don't deserve this, which is completely untrue. I'm very
right.
grateful that now I own that I deserve the best, really. And he is the best for me. Just like you said, you have balance, I have balance too. But I just think the fact that we both have that, it shows how common that is.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I would meet someone like him because I mean, this like we could talk about this. We might have to do another one. Maybe you can do my
Yeah.
podcast.
Heck
But
yeah.
I look back to my teenagers especially. Like I said, we partied so much, but I dressed like provocatively and I was attracting all of the wrong men. But it's almost subconsciously I did that on purpose because I wasn't ready to commit or I wasn't ready to be vulnerable, So I was looking for that superficial connection. And I remember when we had that conversation, I went into that day with Anthony not expecting anything, but I remember sitting there with him and I was just looking at him and I was like, this is real. The feelings that I'm feeling right now, I've never felt these before. This is the real deal. Just such a gentleman, too. You could probably share that with your husband also. Where I wasn't used to someone being a man. Oh, you want a beer? Okay, I'll be right back. I'm like, wait, what? You're gonna serve me? Okay. I remember one time I couldn't park my car and he did it for me. And I was used to guys that just didn't have cars. So I was like, this is amazing. But I think that's when I was like, I deserve this. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It is really hard, unfortunately, for us to get to that point. And honestly, I mean, I just wrote a post about being 40. I talk about a lot of this stuff all the time. I mean, I'm still going through it. Takes a lot to unlearn. It takes a lot, especially when society is out there kind of pressing in on you. Unfortunately, a lot of the messaging still hasn't changed. I do think we've made progress for sure, but still a lot of it, especially visually, has not changed. So it's a struggle, and you just have to, unfortunately, have to go through it in order to learn from it.
Yeah.
So with that, we've reached the end of our episode. But since I'm done with my questions, I wanted to ask, do you have any questions that you would like to ask me before we end?
No question. Just a thank you. You're doing amazing things. I think you're so great. I think you're so cool. When you attended the wellness event, and I remember like, is anyone in Ontario? There was a question someone asked, and I was looking at you, and I'm like, I hope she raises her hand. And you didn't, and, that's okay. You weren't ready, but if I could extend anything to you, it's that. Just own your greatness. You're doing really cool things, and I'm super proud of you. I'm so proud to know you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot, because I feel like most people trying to make their, way don't really know what they're doing. I feel like I'm just kind of like grasping at straws here. But really the only thing you have to do is do it. And that's all I did. I just started doing it. I don't know where it's gonna go, but so far it's led me to great places. I feel like I'm better for having known you, and I'm so glad to have met you and invite you into this space. So yeah, the appreciation is definitely reciprocated. So thank you so much. That was so kind. And yes, I do remember not raising my hand. I was sitting there like, I should raise my hand. No, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. Like, because I think the question was, do you own a business?
Yeah.
And because I'm a writer slash podcaster, it's more of a creative. I was getting too technical in my head, but meanwhile, I was at like an entrepreneur networking event. Like, what was I thinking? I was thinking too hard. Yeah. Okay. So, and then right before you go, would you like to share with listeners where they can find you?
Absolutely. So you can find us on Instagram. Our @ is Local Gem Collective. That's going to be my marketplace of small businesses. If you're interested in more of like my podcast of the Small Business Lover, where I interview small business owners, you're going to look me up on Instagram at the Small Business Lover. And we're located in Orange. We're super close. We're close to every freeway. We're open every day except for Monday. Come visit and hang out.
Yeah, her store is super beautiful, super fun. I definitely recommend it. And yes, I'll have your links in the show notes to make it easily accessible. But thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
So, what do you think? How do you feel? If you like this episode and would like to hear another, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you have some extra time, check out my Substack at jitsie.substack.com. The link will be in the show notes. There, you can check out my memoir series that inspired the podcast and can peek inside the real-life stories and experiences that inspire the topics in each episode. The Crush Chronicles podcast is 100% produced by me, Rachel Jitsiwat. The music is by Music Town, and the sound effects are by Pixabay. Thank you for listening, and until next time, remember, love yourself first. The rest will follow.